The message came while I was tightening a child's ankle brace. 3 pings in a row. Group chat. Pick her up, we're leaving. Then his mother's, don't guilt us. The girl needs to learn. And then my husband's, she must learn. I stood there, brace in one hand, sanity in the other, trying to remember how to breathe. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The pediatric clinic was full of cheerful wall stickers, smiling giraffes, pastel balloons, but the air turned dense around me. I forced a grin for my patient, a shy 5-year-old learning to walk again after an accident. His mother thanked me as I knelt, finishing the adjustment. My fingers trembled, but I smiled like a professional. The kind of smile that says, everything is fine, when the truth is quietly screaming. When the boy left, I locked myself in the supply closet, phone in hand. Lily's face filled my mind, her pink backpack with the unicorn patch, her braid crooked because I was too rushed that morning. Pick her up. We're leaving. They couldn't possibly mean it. Surely it was a twisted joke. I typed, where is she? No answer. Then another message came through from my mother-in-law, Evelyn. Don't make a scene, Julia. This is how children learn consequences. Consequences. The word felt like gravel in my mouth. I could almost hear her syrupy tone, the way she pronounced consequences as if she were dispensing wisdom from a pedestal. I clocked out early, muttering something about a migraine. The receptionist looked worried. I smiled, lied, and fled. The drive to the airport blurred past in bursts of panic and fury. My fingers dug into the steering wheel as I tried not to imagine Lily sitting alone somewhere near a gate, clutching her stuffed bear, waiting for a family that decided she needed to learn. The highway shimmered in the heat, cars weaving around me. Every mile added another layer of disbelief. Mark had promised, we'll wait for you, Jules. Don't stress. His exact words, followed by that lazy grin I used to find charming. Now it felt like the grin of someone who thought rules applied to everyone else. I parked illegally, ran past baggage claim, and scanned the crowd. For one terrifying minute, I didn't see her. Then, there she was, sitting cross-legged near the window, backpack hugged to her chest, eyes red. Mom! Her voice cracked, and she ran to me. I dropped to my knees and held her so tightly she squeaked. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo she insisted on using, even though it made her hair frizz. They left without you? She nodded, hiccuping. Grandma said I was being rude because I wanted to wait for you. Daddy said I had to listen, then they walked away. For a second, the world narrowed to a pinpoint. Not rage, something colder, sharper. Okay, I whispered. Okay, baby. We're going home. We walked through the automatic doors into the humid air, Lily's hand clutching mine like a lifeline. She glanced back once toward the glass wall where planes were taking off. I didn't. The drive back was silent except for the hum of the tires. Lily sniffled, wiped her nose on her sleeve. Will they come back? No, I said quietly. They already left. That night, after Lily fell asleep in my bed, I sat in the kitchen with the lights off. The house was silent except for the refrigerator's low hum. My phone lit up. Mark again. We're already checked in. Don't guilt us, Jules. She needs to understand responsibility. Responsibility. That was his favorite word when he wanted to avoid admitting he'd done something cruel. I stared at the message until the light burned into my eyes. Then I took a screenshot. I opened the group chat again, scrolled back through every message. Evelyn's comments, his sister's likes, even a little laughing emoji from his cousin. It was a family-wide event, apparently. Abandoning an 8-year-old at an airport, team effort. I took screenshots of all of it. For once, I didn't cry. I just saved everything neatly into a folder labeled Receipts. Because that's what therapy taught me. When people show you who they are, make sure you take notes. By morning, I was functioning on caffeine and clarity. I called the airport security office, polite and professional, and requested the footage of the time between 8:02 and 8:30 a.m., explaining my daughter had been left unattended. They promised to review it. The woman's tone shifted halfway through, softening when she realized what had happened. Pity in her voice made my stomach twist. At work, I smiled too much. My coworkers thought I'd had a good weekend. I laughed at their jokes, adjusted braces, listened to stories about their kids. I said, "That's wonderful," more times than I could count. The mask fit perfectly. But at home, the silence grew teeth. Mark posted photos from the airport on social media. His mother grinning, Claire from the office standing suspiciously close to him, his arm draped around her chair in the hotel bar. The caption read, "Family time. Family time. I poured a glass of wine and stared at the screen. I zoomed in on their reflection in a window behind them, the two of them leaning in too close, the sparkle in her eyes that said everything without words. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. 3 days later, Lily and I sat on the porch swing eating popsicles. The neighborhood kids rode bikes, sprinklers danced on manicured lawns, and somewhere, a lawnmower hummed. It was all so normal, it almost felt absurd. "Mom," Lily said, "is Daddy mad at me?" "No, honey." I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "He just forgot what's important." "Will we see him soon?" I smiled softly. "Not for a little while." Inside, my laptop glowed. I'd opened a new bank account that morning. The joint savings, the one I managed, was now safely transferred. Every transaction had a neat legal explanation. I'd learned from years of marriage that the cleanest revenge is the kind that looks like paperwork. That evening, the airport security officer called back. She said they had confirmed the footage. Lily sitting alone for over 40 minutes before an employee noticed her. Her voice trembled as she apologized again. I thanked her, asked for a copy, and said it was for documentation. I sent it to my lawyer along with the chat screenshots. Then, without hesitation, I forwarded everything to Child Services. By the time Mark returned from Disney, there were voicemails waiting for him from the authorities and one from his business partner asking why their account was under review. He called me 22 times that night. I didn't answer once. On the 23rd call, he left a message. "Julia, this has gone too far. My mother's reputation is..." Click. The next morning, he was waiting on the porch when I left for work, face pale, tie crooked. "You reported us?" "Us?" I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't on that flight. He followed me to the car. "It was a misunderstanding. You can't..." "Abandoning a child isn't a misunderstanding, Mark." My tone was calm, almost soothing. The same voice I used with anxious patients. He clenched his jaw. "You're overreacting. You always overreact. And you always underestimate me." I opened the car door. We both have our flaws. His hand tightened on the roof of the car, knuckles whitening. For a second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Fear, maybe, or realization. Then he stepped back, shaking his head. "You'll regret this." "I already regretted marrying into your family," I said, and drove away. By that afternoon, word had spread through our small town. Someone from the local parent group had seen the report online. By evening, the gossip was in full bloom. "Did you hear what happened with the Thompsons?" They whispered in line at the coffee shop. Apparently, they left their little girl at the airport. Kara Jensen, my neighbor and self-appointed town reporter, texted me. "Are you okay? People are saying things about Mark's mom. Something about child services?" I replied, "You know how rumors are. They always have a little truth hidden inside." By the weekend, Evelyn's charity committee had suspended her pending review. Mark's company page quietly removed his photo. And the woman from his office, the one with the too bright smile, deleted every post she'd tagged him in. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in the backyard with a cup of tea while Lily chased bubbles in the grass. The sky was pale orange and the air smelled like fresh-cut lawn. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Mark showed up one last time that week, standing in the driveway like a man waiting for a miracle. "Julia," he said, his voice thin, "we can fix this." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "We? You mean the people who thought teaching our daughter a lesson meant abandoning her in a terminal?" His jaw tensed. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You just never thought I'd do something about it." He stared at me, searching for some trace of the woman he used to manipulate. I gave him none. "You'll ruin me," he said softly. I tilted my head. "Mark, you ruined yourself. I just documented it." He turned away, muttering something about lawyers. I let him go. Watching him walk down the driveway felt strangely quiet, like closing a door that had been left open too long. That night, I tucked Lily into bed, her favorite stuffed bear beside her. She looked up at me sleepily. "Mom, are we okay now?" "Yes," I said, smoothing her hair. "We're okay." When she drifted off, I went back to the kitchen, poured myself another glass of wine, and stared out at the neat line of houses across the street, every window glowing with someone else's secret. The neighborhood looked so calm, so proper. But I knew better now. Behind every trimmed hedge was a story like mine, unspoken, simmering, waiting for its turn. I opened my phone one last time, scrolled through the group chat, and reread that first message. "Pick her up. We're leaving." They wanted to teach a lesson, Now they had one. And I wasn't finished teaching. I leaned back, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence, and smiled to myself. Not a happy smile, something else. Quiet, sharp, and certain. I was done being soft. By Monday morning, the neighborhood had developed a taste for my life. You could feel it in the way sprinklers paused mid-spray when I pulled out of the driveway, the way curtains lifted like curious eyelids. Our cul-de-sac runs on two fuels, premium gas and gossip. The lawns look like they go to private school. The people pretend they don't stare. They do. I dropped Lily at day camp and practiced my calm face for the counselor. Crafts today, I said. She likes glitter, but please keep it off her hair. We're still finding sparkle in the car vents from last time. The counselor laughed. I handed over extra sunscreen like a mother trying to bribe the sun, hugged Lily longer than usual, and told myself that steadiness can be performed until it becomes real. Work gave me something to grip. I saw a 6-year-old who hated her new ankle brace and a 12-year-old gymnast who loved her brace because it meant attention. I wrote notes, adjusted straps, tapped in measurements. On the third patient, my phone buzzed on the counter. I ignored it. On the fourth, it buzzed again. When I finally checked, the screen showed a text from Kara Jensen, neighbor, influencer of block bake sales, and holder of a permanent smirk. You okay? Heard a thing. Call me. I put the phone face down and finished an exercise set with the gymnast. Count to 10, I said. She counted. I counted my breaths. At lunch, I called Kara while sitting on the curb behind the clinic, next to a cold brick wall and a dumpster that could have starred in its own cautionary tale. Julia, she said, jumping on the call like it was a trampoline. People are talking. They always are, I said. What's the topic today? The hydrangeas forming cliques again. Funny. A pause. You could hear her adjusting the crown on her head of neighborhood rumors. It's about Mark and that woman at his office. Claire. I closed my eyes. Which woman at his office named Claire? There are probably more Claires there than printers. The Claire with hair so smooth it looks photoshopped, she said. They walked into Blue Heron last Thursday and sat in the far booth. He held her chair. She laughed at his jokes like she was being graded on it. A friend of mine was there. She saw. Your friend has excellent observational skills, I said. Does she also solve crimes on the side? Kara lowered her voice like a stage whisper. Look, I know you hate this, but I also know what your mother-in-law is like. People are saying the airport thing wasn't the first time she pushed something cruel, and honey, you weren't there to hold his hand, so he held someone else's. I pictured the hotel bar photo with Claire leaning in, the reflection catching the angle of his arm. I could pretend it wasn't what it clearly was. But I had retired from pretending 2 weeks ago. What exactly did your friend see? I asked. 2 drinks each. They split a dessert. He touched her wrist when she joked about something, and she had that glow, you know? The one that says, look at me, I'm the main character. Kara paused. And then there was another thing. After dinner, they stood by his truck, and she leaned into him. It looked intimate. Romantic or careless? I asked. Both, she said. Romantic for them. Careless for you. Noted, I said, and ended the call before she could decorate the story with more ribbon. Back inside, I washed my hands longer than necessary, watching the water slide over my skin. I remembered mornings when Mark would touch my elbow in passing, a casual, almost absent kind of affection. He was generous with gestures when an audience was present. He could be charming in ways that fooled even me, and I lived with the man. I spent the rest of the day doing what I do best, paying attention while pretending not to. I've learned it from years in treatment rooms. Kids show you the truth when you stop trying to pry it out of them. Adults do too. That evening, Lily and I made grilled cheese and tomato soup because comfort should be simple and dip well. She talked about a cardboard castle they built at camp and who got to be in charge of the drawbridge. Not her, a scandal. I listened with my full face, which is what children notice, and made plans with the rest of me. After she fell asleep, I sat with my laptop at the kitchen island and opened my calendar. I scrolled through Mark's shared work events, which he sometimes forgot to hide. Logistics owners live by trucking schedules and vendor calls. You can set a watch by their appointments. He had blocked off Tuesday night with a vague client dinner. Vague is a story waiting to be told. I didn't need a noir soundtrack or a trench coat. I had khaki capris and a cardigan because suburban stealth is a different art. At 9 that night, I drove past his office park, the kind with trees that look carefully glued to the lawn. The windows were mostly dark. One strip of light glowed from a second-floor suite. I parked on the far side where cameras would see only common asphalt and a woman eating pretzels in her car. At 9:30, a compact silver SUV rolled in and slipped into a spot near the back exit. I knew that car the way you know which neighbor forgets trash day. I'd seen it at staff parties, Christmas events, the company picnic where Claire organized the tug-of-war and managed to make rope look glamorous. Her SUV had a thin scratch on the rear panel from a parking lot mishap last winter. I'd been the one to say, "Ouch, happens to the best of us," while she had blinked, smiled, and said, "It adds character," in a voice that sounded like sugar dusted over a brick. The back exit door opened. Two silhouettes stepped into the light, paused, and stayed too close. He did the pointless, chivalrous thing, hand on her back as if the door weighed 100 pounds and she was made of mist. They moved toward his truck and stood beside it the way people stand when they share a secret. He touched her wrist. She laughed. And then, as if acting out the same scene from the restaurant report, she leaned in. A tiny, thoughtful part of me wanted to look away, to spare myself the sting of it. The rest of me took note like a careful clerk and filed it under Exhibit B. I didn't take pictures, not tonight. The reality was enough. Also, I know what holds up and what doesn't. Dark lots and grainy phone photos don't convince anyone except the person who needs them to. I'd already learned that the best documentation glows with text confirmations and timestamps you can print. They left separately, like people who think they're being clever. I drove home, steady at the wheel, my whole body a quiet classroom for a new subject called payback strategy. The next morning, I ran into Evelyn at the market where the produce section looks like a still life painting and the prices feel like a dare. She stood near the avocados, judging them with the same stern focus she used on people. She was in a navy sheath dress and pearls at 9 a.m, as if the store had a dress code. My cart held yogurt, carrots, a rotisserie chicken, and a decision. "Julia," she said, the syllables polished. "How are you holding up?" "Great," I said. "Sleep is a beautiful thing when you finally get some." She smiled, a chill little smile. "I heard certain agencies were contacted after the airport misunderstanding. I selected an avocado, squeezed it gently, decided it was too soft, put it back. What happened at the airport was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice. Several, actually." "There was no danger," she said. "Plenty of staff in those places. She was never truly alone." "She was truly alone," I said. "And you know it." She lifted her chin a fraction. "You've always been emotional, Julia. You let that child run you." "Interesting," I said. "If compassion counts as being run, then sure, I'm sprinting." She tilted her head. "And Mark, he's in a difficult position now." "He put himself there," I said. "And he had help." "Be careful," she said, voice dipped in warning. "You don't want to start something that burns you, too." I had a flash of my carefully labeled folder of screenshots, the message where Mark typed, "She must learn." "I'm very careful," I said. "That's the difference between us." We parted like strangers, clinging to a thin excuse to pretend we weren't enemies. I checked out and drove straight to Kara's. On purpose. "If you want your message to travel, you give it to the Postal Service of Suburbia." She opened the door fast enough to bruise the air. "Well?" "Quick question," I said. "If someone parked a certain silver SUV outside a certain office late at night, would that be something people would want to know?" Kara's eyes glittered like someone had handed her a wrapped present. "People love to know what they shouldn't. Why?" "No reason," I said, stepping inside. Her foyer smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. "Consider this a public service announcement. Discretion is out of style." "Julia," she said, closing the door. "Are you okay?" "I'm excellent," I said. "I'm organized." That afternoon, I found Lily on the porch with a sketchbook. She was drawing our house with big windows and a tree that looked like cotton candy. She had added a small figure to the front step, me, with a cape. "What's that?" I asked. "You," she said, like it was obvious. "You're brave." I swallowed and sat beside her. "What makes you say that?" "You always fix things," she said. "Like you fix braces. You fix people." The compliment landed somewhere soft and aching. "Thanks, kiddo," I said, and bumped her shoulder with mine. "Want tacos tonight?" We ate tacos under the string lights and laughed about the counselor who mixed up the snack schedule and accidentally distributed carrots during cookie day. It felt like a tiny holiday in the middle of a long winter, standing in our own backyard. After bedtime, I dressed in leggings and a hoodie I could have sworn I put in the closet donation bag last month. The thing about plans is they don't need to be grand to be effective. They just need to be precise. At 10, I drove back to the office park with a tote bag that clinked quietly. The lot was mostly empty. A janitor's van idled near the lobby. Someone inside sang softly to a radio. I parked 3 rows over from Claire's spot. I knew it was hers because she had a little office sticker on the corner of her windshield that employees with seniority got. Mark had bragged about giving them out like medals. The tote held a small funnel, a pair of latex gloves left over from my clinic first aid kit, and 2 gallons of white vinegar. Vinegar, when poured into the intake area of an SUV's HVAC system, creates a smell that could make a person rethink their life choices for a month. It isn't harmful, it isn't permanent, it's simply unforgettable. I had Googled it enough to be sure I wasn't breaking any serious laws or harming the vehicle in any fundamental way. Annoyance as art. I waited until the janitor's van hummed off. Then I walked casually to her car, the way a person walks when they've dropped something and gone back to fetch it. Hood popped? No, I didn't need that. The intake vents by the wipers were enough. I worked fast. Funnel in, vinegar poured slowly so it didn't overflow. Second bottle for good measure. A neat circle of harmless revenge. I wiped the area clean, tucked everything back into the tote, and walked away without looking back. My heart didn't race so much as jog politely. I've sat with children through their first painful steps after casts come off. Patience is in my bones. Revenge, it turns out, can be patient too. The next morning, I lifted Lily into the car for school and found glitter on the seat again, like the universe couldn't help itself. I smiled and drove. At noon, Kara texted, "Are you at your desk?" "Lunch break," I wrote. "Go to the company Instagram, look at the newest video, you're welcome." I opened the app. There, posted by an intern who clearly loved drama more than job security, was a video of Claire in the parking lot, fanning her face with both hands, eyes watering, flitting around her SUV like a bird who'd flown into a smell. Someone had captioned it with a line of lemon emojis and the words, "When your ride smells like salad dressing." In the background, you could see the corner of Mark's truck. You could also hear someone off camera say, "Hey, you okay?" followed by Claire's choked laugh. It's fine. Oh wow, it's everywhere." The video had 500 likes in an hour. Comments poured in, dressed as sympathy but lined with curiosity. Wasn't she the event planner? Is that the boss's truck? Why is he there? The internet has a way of turning the volume up on things people should whisper. An hour later, the video disappeared, which always tells a bigger story than leaving it up. The internet never forgets, but it will accept a bribe to look away for 5 minutes. Screenshots were already traveling the neighborhood like Valentines. I walked into the clinic break room and poured coffee I didn't need. My hands were steady. My smile felt oddly genuine. "Big plans this weekend?" my coworker Jenna asked, stirring her yogurt with a spoon that looked too small for the job. "Spring cleaning," I said. "I'm in the mood to organize." Back home, I started with the junk drawer. It's a small thing, sorting batteries and rubber bands and spare keys to locks that probably belong to houses we don't own anymore. But it felt like telling the universe I was serious. Later that night, I placed 3 manila folders on the kitchen island like I was setting a table. The first folder held the airport screenshots and the footage confirmation. The second contained the bank statements and the list of transactions I managed in the last 2 weeks, all clean, all legal, every transfer annotated like a teacher grading a test. The third folder was blank on purpose. You have to leave room for escalation. On Thursday, I met with our lawyer, Nora, a woman with steady eyes and a habit of tapping a pen when clients said something unwise. She listened while I explained. I kept my voice level and my sentences simple. She nodded, asked for dates, asked for copies, and then asked one question that made me sit a little taller. "What outcome do you want, Julia?" I thought about Lily's cape drawing. I thought about Evelyn's tight smile and Mark's loose promises. I thought about the smell of vinegar and the look on Claire's face. "I want my life back," I said. "I want my daughter safe with me, without anyone telling her that cruelty is a lesson. I want my home quiet, and I want them to understand deeply that I'm not the soft one they think I am." "That's several outcomes," Nora said, but she smiled, a little impressed. "We can work with that." By Friday, the town had accepted the new plotline. The Thompsons were no longer the poster family for holiday cards. They were a warning label. I could feel the shift in the way people greeted me. Careful, respectful, curious. I didn't perform for them. I let them build their own conclusions out of facts I had carefully arranged where they'd be easy to find. That evening, after Lily drifted off mid-chapter of the library book about a raccoon detective, I sat on the porch steps with a mug of peppermint tea. The summer night buzzed with crickets and far-off laughter. My phone vibrated for the first time in hours. A text from a number I didn't know. "You don't know me well, but I wanted to tell you something. I work at the office. They think we don't see things. We do." I stared at the message for a long second. Then, "Thank you for reaching out." He uses the back exit on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She waits by the forklift door. They think it's subtle. It's not. Also, his mother has been calling the front desk to ask who has been talking to you. No one, yet. You're kind to write. I texted. Be careful, and thank you. You're welcome. He used to help me carry boxes. Lately he walks like he's above gravity. I figured you should know. I put the phone face down and looked at the quiet street. Somewhere a sprinkler started its rhythm. Somewhere else a dog barked because a squirrel had the nerve to exist. The world went on, looking normal. That's the thing about secrets. They don't change the sky. They just change what you see when you look up. On Saturday, I drove with Lily to the farmer's market because we like the peaches there and because moving through crowds with my daughter's hand in mine made me feel anchored. We bought honey from the man who calls everyone neighbor and a bunch of sunflowers that tried too hard to be cheerful. On the way back, I made a turn by the office park almost without deciding. The lot was quiet in the afternoon, heat shimmering above the pavement. I cruised past Claire's spot and saw a new air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror, a little pine tree trying to fight a battle it had already lost. I almost laughed. Can we get ice cream? Lily asked from the back seat. We can, I said. We absolutely can. We ate cones on a bench in the shade, and she told me a joke she'd learned about a duck and a lemonade stand. It was not a good joke, which made it perfect. She giggled so hard she snorted, and I felt my heart expand inside my ribs like it had been told there was more room now. By Sunday night, I was ready for the next phase, which wasn't cinematic, but would be effective. I drafted an email from an anonymous account to 2 of Mark's clients, attaching a recording from Evelyn's dinner 2 weeks prior. It wasn't illegal. It was captured at a public restaurant by a woman at the next table who happens to enjoy sending me gifts wrapped in plausible deniability. It featured Evelyn berating a waiter and Mark shrugging as if cruelty came with the bread. No curses, no slurs, just the kind of arrogance that makes people reconsider contracts. I didn't send it yet. Not because I was unsure, but because I've learned timing is everything. You don't blow all your fireworks at once. You set them up in a row and light them according to the wind. On Tuesday, I tucked a clean t-shirt into my tote and headed to the office park early just to drive through. It was 9:45 when the silver SUV slid in again, right on cue. She parked, smoothed her hair in the mirror, and checked her teeth with the kind of smile that assumed the world wanted to see it. I kept driving, looped around, and paused at the curb as if looking for an address. His truck arrived 3 minutes later. They both stepped out. The space between them was charged in a way that felt almost theatrical. I studied the scene the way I study a patient's gait. What favors what shifts when no one thinks you're watching. They went inside the back exit. I let out a breath and realized I was smiling. Not a bright, happy thing, a precise smile. It felt like picking up the right tool from a tray after fumbling with the wrong ones for years. That night, Kara called. You didn't hear it from me, she said in a tone that meant I would quote her exactly later. But someone at the company said the staff group chat exploded about a smell in the parking lot. Claire went through 2 car washes. She's blaming the landscaping crew. Well, I said, sipping tea, shrubs have been known to hold grudges. What are you going to do next? Kara asked, trying to sound casual and sounding like curiosity in heels. I'm going to sleep, I said. Then I'm going to work. And then I'm going to make sure the next thing lands where it should. Julia, she said softly, you scare me a little. Good, I said. Maybe that means I finally scare the right people. Later, when I took out the trash, I stood at the curb and watched the quiet street. The summer sky held on to the last light the way a child holds a secret, not quite ready to let it go. I pictured that back exit door, the way he placed his hand on her spine like she might float away if he didn't. I pictured the group chat where they told me to pick up my own child like she was a package. They wanted to teach a lesson, so do I. The clock on the stove turned to 10 and clicked like a metronome waking up. I washed my hands, turned off the porch light, and closed the door with care. Somewhere in the dark, plans rearranged themselves into a cleaner shape, like dishes lining up neatly on a rack. I didn't rush them, I only listened. And late, much later, when my phone buzzed once on the nightstand, I didn't jump. I leaned over, looked at the screen, and felt that precise smile return. A message from the anonymous office friend. Thursday. Back exit, 10:15. He'll say he's at a client dinner. He won't be. Cameras on the north lot are being replaced. The south lot cameras work fine. Just thought you should know. I typed, I appreciate you. I set the phone down and lay there thinking of the south lot, of angles and light, of patience, of timing. Outside, a car rolled by slow and soft as if not wanting to wake anyone. I closed my eyes and pictured a silver SUV, a familiar truck, and the quiet snap of a trap that only closes when the animal walks in willingly. When it does, you don't cheer. You just take note of the time. Write it down where you'll find it later, and make sure the gate holds. Morning sunlight spread through the blinds like a rumor. Bright, thin, insistent. I woke before Lily, before the alarm, before the neighborhood sprinklers began their synchronized ballet. Something in me had changed shape. The air around me felt charged, not loud, not dramatic, just awake. At breakfast, Lily told me she'd dreamed of building a fort made of pillows so tall you could see the clouds through the gaps. I told her maybe we could try it this weekend. She grinned, jelly on her chin, and said, "Can we make a flag too?" "Every fort needs one," I said, wiping her face with a napkin. After I dropped her at school, I sat in the car with the engine running and stared at the dashboard. Thursday, 10:15, back exit, South Lot cameras active. A clean opportunity, gift wrapped by someone inside Mark's company who clearly wanted to see justice served with a side of theater. But revenge, I'd learned, couldn't rely on accidents or luck. It needed structure. So I made one. The plan was simple, quiet, and thoroughly suburban, like folding laundry, if folding laundry could destroy reputations. I called a client from my therapy practice, one of the local school counselors I sometimes consulted with, and asked if she knew anyone in small-scale private security. "Nothing serious," I said. "Just installing cameras for my practice, Safety for the kids." She gave me a number. A man named Ben, retired cop turned tech installer, met me at the clinic that afternoon. He was polite, brisk, smelled faintly of coffee and sawdust. "3 cameras, entry points," he said, tapping his tablet. "Easy setup, cloud backup, timestamps." "Perfect." When he left, I ordered a similar setup online. Same model, same cloud service, same everything. Just shipped to my home. That night, after Lily fell asleep with her stuffed bear in one arm and a flashlight still glowing under the blanket, I unpacked the box. The cameras were small, discreet, easy to mount. I tested one in the kitchen, watched it blink blue, and smiled at how clear the footage was. I didn't need to plant them anywhere illegal. I just needed them visible enough to make people nervous and functional enough to make them truthful. By Wednesday, word of Claire's car fiasco had spread so widely it had become myth. She was the girl with the salad-scented SUV, the punchline at 2 local brunch spots, and probably the subject of a dozen passive-aggressive office jokes. Mark, being the gallant gentleman he always pretended to be, had tried to defend her. That only made it worse. Kara sent me screenshots of a local forum thread titled, "Office Romance or Corporate Catastrophe." The comments were deliciously vicious. I didn't add to them. I didn't need to. The internet was doing my marketing. Thursday arrived like a secret dare. I wore plain clothes, neutral colors, no lipstick, no jewelry. Just Julia the therapist, Julia the mom, Julia who used to bake for charity events before her life became an emotional chessboard. At 9:45, I parked in the south lot, far corner, angled toward the office building. I wasn't hiding, I was observing. There's a difference. Mark's truck rolled in first. He was punctual in everything except decency. He stepped out in his usual work uniform, blue button-down, sleeves rolled, smile rehearsed. 10 minutes later, Claire arrived. She was in a cream blouse that glowed against the sunlight, sunglasses perched like armor. They exchanged a look that was supposed to be discreet, but had too much current to hide. He touched her elbow, gentle, familiar. She laughed. I recorded none of it. My camera rested idle beside me. Instead, I noted the time, the body language, the routine. People reveal everything through repetition. At 10:50, they left together. Claire in her SUV, Mark in his truck. Separate directions, same secret. I waited another 10 minutes before starting my car. That's when I noticed the company sign across the lot, faded blue letters reading Thompson Logistics. Once, I'd thought it meant stability, family, progress. Now it just looked like a tombstone for trust. I drove home with the radio off. My mind worked faster than the wheels. At home, I set the cameras strategically. One by the garage, one near the front walkway, one inside, facing the living room window. They weren't for security, they were props. Evidence of vigilance, the kind of thing that made liars sweat. That evening, Mark called. "We need to talk," he said, his voice unusually tight. "About?" "Someone's spreading stories. Claire's furious. The team's whispering." "That sounds inconvenient," I said, stirring pasta. He sighed heavily. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Enjoying what? My husband being the subject of workplace gossip? No, Mark, I'm simply watching it unfold, like everyone else." He muttered something I couldn't make out. "You've changed." "You left our daughter at an airport," I said softly. "That tends to shift perspectives." He went quiet. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, but that would require introspection, a skill he'd never developed. "I'm coming by tomorrow," he said finally. "We're talking in person." "Bring your mother," I said. "She started this symphony. She should hear the finale." He hung up. The next day, I baked cookies. Not as a peace offering, more like a theatrical set piece. The smell filled the house, cheerful and domestic, the kind of scent that lies beautifully. Mark arrived at noon sharp, Evelyn in tow. She looked immaculate, of course, in a lavender suit that probably cost more than my car. Mark looked tired, creased shirt, unshaven, eyes darting around like he was expecting ambush. I smiled warmly. "Welcome. Cookies?" Evelyn's lips pursed. "Julia, we're not here for pleasantries." "Then you might want to skip the kitchen," I said. "It's full of them." Mark exhaled sharply. "Can we not do this?" "Oh, we can absolutely do this." I folded my arms. "Let's discuss how we define family responsibility, starting with abandoning minors at transportation hubs." Evelyn gasped. "You're still holding on to that?" "Funny," I said. "I thought you liked lessons. You said Lily needed to learn. Consider me a fast learner, too." Mark rubbed his temples. "Julia, this isn't productive." "Neither is pretending nothing happened." I tilted my head. "Did you know there's an open investigation into child neglect? I didn't even have to file it. The footage spoke for itself." He went still. "You have that?" "I have everything." Evelyn's face lost a shade of confidence. "You wouldn't." "I already did." The room went quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I watched the realization crawl across their faces like a slow dawn. Mark straightened, trying to regain ground. "You're enjoying the power trip." "No," I said. "I'm documenting it." He glanced at the small camera above the doorway, one of the new ones blinking its soft blue light. His shoulders stiffened. "You're recording this?" I smiled faintly. "You always said transparency was important in relationships." Evelyn stood abruptly. "We're leaving." "You do that?" I said. "Oh, and Evelyn, maybe cancel the charity brunch next week. I'd hate for the press to ask about family values." Her heels clicked out the door like punctuation marks to a confession. Mark lingered in the doorway, half turned toward me. "You've changed," he said again, quieter this time. "No," I said. I finally stopped apologizing. When they were gone, I leaned against the counter and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The house felt cleaner somehow, like the air had passed inspection. Later, Kara came over under the pretense of borrowing sugar, but really for the post-game commentary. "They looked furious," she said, sipping her coffee. Evelyn was red enough to match her lipstick. "Good color on her," I said. "You know," Kara said thoughtfully, "people used to call you soft. Not anymore." "Soft doesn't mean weak," I said. "It just means quiet until necessary." She smiled. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's better than television." That night, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea watching the quiet street outside. Every porch light glowed like a secret. The neighborhood still looked perfect, but perfection cracks easily under pressure. I thought about Mark's expression when he saw the camera. Fear disguised as indignation. It was almost satisfying. Almost. The next phase would require more than humiliation. It would require precision, the kind of precision only someone who understands human behavior could manage. As I turned off the lights, I whispered to the empty room, "This isn't over yet." And for the first time, I didn't mean it as a threat. I meant it as a promise. By the time the weekend arrived, the entire neighborhood seemed to pulse with low-grade tension, like a held breath waiting for someone else to exhale first. Elm Drive was built to look tranquil, rows of trimmed hedges, pastel shutters, the illusion of calm. But beneath it, gossip had become currency. Every conversation at the coffee shop started with a cautious, "Did you hear?" followed by my last name, said in tones of awe or dread depending on the speaker's marriage stability. I didn't mind. Fear is a fine substitute for respect. Saturday morning began like any other. Lily made pancakes shaped like hearts, which mostly resembled irregular blobs. We laughed anyway. She asked if we could drive to the park after breakfast. "Sure," I said. "We'll go later. Mommy has a few errands first." Errands was a polite way of saying operations. At 10, I drove to the next town, a neat little suburb 15 minutes away where no one knew me as that woman whose husband left her kid at an airport. I found a cozy coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, ordered a large latte, and opened my laptop. My first task, an anonymous email to a journalist I'd met years ago during a charity event at the clinic. Back then, she'd written glowing features about our community's model families. The Thompsons had been one of her favorites. I wondered how she'd feel about a follow-up story. The email was short and factual. You may want to check the recent child neglect investigation involving Mark and Evelyn Thompson. Sources say evidence exists. Check the family group chat and local authorities. I added no signature. Gossip only works when it feels organic. Then I drove to the Thompson family home, Evelyn's prized colonial on Elm Drive. The place looked like it belonged on a postcard. White pillars, ivy-curtained fences, an American flag perfectly ironed into stillness. But the atmosphere around it hummed differently now. Parked in front was Mark's truck, flanked by his sister's SUV. They were holding a family meeting, probably to strategize damage control. I could practically hear Evelyn rehearsing lines. This is all exaggerated. The media twists things. I parked 2 houses down and walked toward the gate, pretending to admire the landscaping. A motion light flicked on, spilling brightness over the driveway. That was my cue to smile and wave at the camera, a subtle message. I see you seeing me. Inside, I imagined the conversation. Evelyn pacing, Mark defensive, his sister offering empty solutions. I didn't need to be in the room to hear it. I'd lived that pattern for years. When I returned home, Kara was watering her roses like she expected me. Busy morning? She asked, shading her eyes. Just errands, I said. She leaned on her fence, eager. You missed quite a scene. Evelyn's house had more cars than the 4th of July parade. I heard shouting from my porch. Oh, I said, feigning mild curiosity. Something about the charity board suspending her again, and Mark storming off after she called him an embarrassment. Family bonding, I said, smiling. Kara chuckled. You play it cool, but I know you enjoy watching them eat each other alive. I don't enjoy it, I said. I just think karma's finally checking its inbox. That afternoon, I took Lily to the park, watched her climb and shout and swing until the air smelled like sunshine and wood chips. Parents greeted me cautiously, uncertain whether to offer sympathy or space. I offered polite smiles and kept my distance. People respect mystery more than explanations. That evening, when Lily was in bed, I prepared for Phase 2. The goal wasn't destruction, it was exposure. Mark's business depended on local contracts and his image as a reliable community partner. If that image cracked, the rest would crumble on its own. I opened my laptop again and composed an email to his 3 main clients, posing as an anonymous, concerned parent from our town. The message was concise, polite, and devastating. You may not be aware, but Mark Thompson and his company are under active review by child welfare authorities following an incident of neglect. As a parent and customer, I would think twice before associating with a brand whose leadership shows such disregard for family safety. It wasn't defamatory. It was true. The phrasing was mild enough to sound civic-minded. Then I attached a copy of Evelyn's recorded charity dinner meltdown, which I'd quietly acquired through Kara's network of overzealous phone users. It wasn't scandalous, just humiliating. Evelyn berating a volunteer for serving non-organic hors d'oeuvres, Mark sitting beside her, smirking instead of intervening. I hit send. The next morning, Mark called. His voice had lost its arrogance. Now it wobbled like someone walking on a frozen lake. Julia, he said, what did you do? I made coffee, I said, taking a sip. You sent something to my clients. 3 of them dropped meetings this morning. Do you have any idea what you've... Corrected, I offered. Ruined. No, Mark. You did that. I just forwarded the evidence. He fell silent long enough for me to imagine him realizing that everything he'd built rested on the foundation of someone else's patience, and mine had expired. You're making yourself look bad too, he said finally, a last-ditch attempt at control. Not really, I said. I look like a mother protecting her child. The town seems to like that narrative. He exhaled hard. Julia, please. You'll figure it out, I said. You're good at logistics. I hung up. By evening, the story had spread beyond our circle. The journalist I'd written earlier had published a small online piece. Local business owner under investigation after child neglect report. The tone was neutral, almost delicate, but the comment section wasn't. The next morning, the smart home malfunction was the cherry on top. Mark and Evelyn had been hosting an impromptu dinner for the remaining charity board members to do damage control. I'd known about it because Kara's husband was catering. He'd mentioned the time, the guest list, and accidentally that their new smart system was connected to an app Mark managed. Funny thing about passwords, most people never change them. I'd created the original system years ago when we first installed it. Lights, sprinklers, thermostat. Mark had once complained about forgetting the login. I still had the credentials saved in a note titled Projects That Matter. At 7:30, as their guests arrived, I opened the app. One tap sent the lights flickering like a haunted carnival. Another turned on every sprinkler around the perimeter, soaking designer shoes. I adjusted the thermostat to 90 for a few minutes, then back to 60. Controlled chaos, just enough to cause a scene. I could imagine Evelyn's face turning crimson, her pearl necklace clinging to her throat like guilt. I watched through the live feed on their porch camera, publicly accessible due to Mark's laziness, as people fled the house, waving at the downpour of sprinklers. Someone slipped. A car alarm went off. It was beautiful in its symmetry, just the right mix of humiliation and poetic balance. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a message from Mark. "Stop this. Please. You're destroying me." I replied, "Correction. You're watching yourself be destroyed. There's a difference." He didn't respond. By that afternoon, Evelyn's name had been removed from the charity's board website, and Mark's company page had quietly changed family-owned to locally managed. Small edits, but telling ones. That night, Kara texted, "Was that you? Tell me it was you." "Who else would it be?" I wrote back. "Remind me never to cross you." Consider yourself reminded. Later, as I watched Lily sleeping peacefully, I wondered if this was how justice always felt. Not triumphant, but still, like the moment after a storm when the air hums with leftover thunder. At 2 a.m, I woke to a soft noise outside. A car engine idling. I peeked through the curtains. Mark sat in his truck at the curb, lights off, just staring at the house. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, he drove away. The next morning, I found an envelope on the porch. No note, just a single printed photo. It was of the three of us from years ago, smiling at a county fair. Lily had a balloon, Mark had his arm around me, we looked like a family from a brochure. On the back, written in his neat, tense handwriting, "Please stop." I slid it into a drawer and closed it. Stop? We weren't even at the finale yet. Because every story, especially a suburban one, deserves a party before it ends. And this one? It was going to be spectacular. Monday morning arrived dressed and calm, but it was the kind that precedes a thunderstorm. Every neighbor on Elm Drive acted like nothing had changed, but I saw the way conversations paused when I passed by, the way voices lowered behind manicured hedges. The scandal had become community theater. Everyone wanted front row seats. Mark's truck hadn't been outside his mother's house for 2 days. Evelyn's social calendar was a wasteland, her charity boards, book clubs, and Pilates group all mysteriously postponed. Kara naturally had the details. According to her, Evelyn's best friend had accidentally leaked that Evelyn had suffered a nervous spell. In reality, she'd probably locked herself inside her colonial fortress, sipping tea and plotting counterattacks that would never land. I almost felt bad. Almost. By Wednesday, the invitations went out. The Elm Drive Garden Gala, hosted by the Thompson family. That name used to include me. It still did, technically, but only on legal documents. It was Evelyn's last desperate attempt to reassert control, to remind the town that the Thompsons were still the backbone of the community. The irony made me laugh out loud when Kara showed me the e-invite on her phone. "She's throwing a party," Kara said, eyes wide. "After everything." "Classic Evelyn," I said. "When the ship sinks, she brings out the fine china." "Are you going?" "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world." The night of the gala arrived humid and buzzing with tension. The Thompsons' garden twinkled with fairy lights, tables arranged like a wedding reception. Waiters in black vests glided around serving champagne flutes to people pretending to be relaxed. From a distance, it looked perfect. Up close, you could smell the fear, perfumed, polite, and choking. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing dramatic, just neat, quiet power. The kind of outfit that said, "I'm not here to scream, I'm here to observe you destroy yourselves." When I arrived, a hush rippled through the guests like a breeze across grass. Evelyn was at the center of the patio, surrounded by what remained of her entourage. Her pearls were gone. I almost didn't recognize her without them. Mark stood near the drink table, nursing a glass of something amber, his jaw tight. "Julia," Evelyn said, forcing a smile that strained at the edges. "How kind of you to come." "I wouldn't dream of missing it," I said. "You throw the best farewells." Her eyes flickered. "It's not a farewell." "Oh, I think it is," I said softly. "You just haven't realized which one yet." Before she could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. "Julia!" Claire approached, dressed in a glittering gold dress that caught the lights like she thought she was the event. Her smile was too bright. "You look radiant. "You smell like vinegar," I said pleasantly. Her smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "Air conditioning still acting up?" I asked. I read somewhere that persistent odors can really cling to upholstery. The people near us caught the edge of that exchange, whispering. Claire stiffened, turned on her heel, and vanished into the crowd. I watched her go and felt the tiniest thrill of satisfaction. Mark noticed, of course. He came over, setting down his drink. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting family," I said. "Isn't that what we do?" "Julia, enough," he hissed. "This isn't a game." "Oh, I agree," I said. "Games have rules." He stared at me, his voice dropping low. "You've made your point." "I don't think I have," I said. "Not yet." The music started then, a local jazz trio playing something too upbeat for the mood. Conversations turned louder, covering discomfort with noise. The evening stretched on, fake smiles pasted over unraveling alliances. At 8:30, I excused myself from a conversation with Kara and slipped inside the house. I knew the layout as well as my own. Every creaking board, every pointless antique Evelyn insisted was heritage. The family study was upstairs, door slightly ajar. Inside, Mark's laptop, open on the desk. I had one objective. 2 weeks earlier, during his visit, Mark's phone had automatically synced to my home Wi-Fi. I'd noted the email linked to his company's internal communication channel, same password he'd used for years. He never learned. I plugged in a small flash drive and copied everything I needed. Correspondence between him and Claire, not love notes, Mark wasn't that poetic, but workplace chatter with just enough flirtation and carelessness to look unprofessional, a trail of misjudgment long enough to end a career. Downstairs, the clinking of glasses and laughter turned brittle. Evelyn was making a speech, voice trembling as she thanked everyone for standing by the family through trying times. I timed it perfectly. The speakers around the patio crackled, the kind of soft feedback that makes people glance at each other. Then, instead of the planned background playlist, the microphones picked up a different audio file, the one I'd uploaded to the system minutes earlier through their network. Evelyn's voice filled the air. "Honestly, the girl needs stricter rules. Julia spoils her. No wonder Mark feels trapped. Claire's a better influence, more disciplined." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mark's face turned rigid. Evelyn froze, eyes wide, the microphone trembling in her hand. "People like Julia don't last in this family. She doesn't understand how we operate." The recording continued, smooth and merciless. "She's sentimental. Weak." I almost applauded. Mark lunged toward the sound booth, but the damage was done. The guests stood in stunned silence, realizing they were witnessing a social autopsy in real time. Evelyn dropped the microphone. It hit the ground with a hollow thud. The crowd began to disperse quietly, leaving half-finished drinks on tables. I walked to the edge of the patio, met Mark's eyes, and said, "Transparency, remember?" He strode toward me, anger cracking through his composure. "You think this makes you the hero?" "No," I said, stepping closer. "It makes me the mirror." He grabbed my arm, just enough to make his point, but before he could speak, the nearest waiter cleared his throat. "Sir, maybe you should let go." He did. Immediately, the crowd had eyes again. "Get out," he whispered. "Gladly," I said, pulling my arm free. "But you should really check your company email before midnight." I turned and walked through the gate, the faint sound of Evelyn's voice still echoing behind me through the open speakers. Lily's drawing, the one of me with the cape, flashed in my mind, and for the first time, I felt like I'd earned it. On the drive home, rain began to fall. It wasn't dramatic, just steady. Streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement, turning the world into streaks of gold. My phone buzzed twice, messages from Kara. "What did you do? They're imploding." "You are officially terrifying." I didn't answer. I just kept driving. When I pulled into the driveway, Lily's light was still on upstairs. I went in quietly, peeked through the crack in her door. She was asleep on top of the covers, book open, one hand resting on her stuffed bear. Safe, peaceful, mine. I walked back to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. The house was still, but my mind hummed with quiet electricity. Tomorrow would be the fallout. There always is. But tonight, I had something better than sleep. I had silence, the kind that comes after the last note of a perfect song, when the air is thick with everything that's been said. Somewhere, far down Elm Drive, alarms began to wail. Mark's house. I smiled faintly, not surprised. The smart home system I'd updated last week had a timer. One final glitch. Lights flashing, sprinklers erupting, doors locking themselves from the inside. No one hurt, just chaos. Enough to make headlines. I turned off the kitchen light, took one last sip of water, and whispered to the dark, "He said she must learn." Then, after a beat, lesson delivered. Outside, the rain washed over the street, carrying away the noise, the secrets, the remnants of perfection. Tomorrow, the town would talk. Tonight, Elm Drive belonged to me. Morning came too bright for a town that had just devoured its royalty. By sunrise, the Thompsons' house looked like a stage after the curtain fell. Lights still on, music equipment toppled, sprinklers dripping across a trampled lawn. Kara's text came at 6:15. Police showed up last night. Not for anything criminal, just chaos. Evelyn was screaming about sabotage. "You didn't, you know?" I replied, "I didn't touch a thing. It just malfunctioned." Which was technically true. Systems malfunction when their owners forget who programmed them. By 8 a.m., every group chat in the zip code was ablaze. The video of Evelyn's voice, the one that had hijacked her own party, was already circulating. Someone had filmed the crowd's reaction and posted it online with the caption, "The end of Elm Drive's royal family." I made pancakes for Lily again, this time shaped like stars. "Can we go to the park later?" she asked, syrup dripping from her fork. "Of course," I said. "We deserve some air." When she left for school, I sat by the kitchen window, watching the morning unfold. Across the street, Kara walked her dog extra slowly, pausing near my mailbox, pretending to admire the trees. A few cars rolled past slower than usual, spectators doing drive-by curiosity checks. For years, I'd been invisible. Now, I was a headline. At 10, my lawyer called. "Julia," she said, her voice composed but edged with amusement, "Mark's attorney contacted us. He wants to settle amicably." His words. I stirred my coffee. "Meaning?" "Meaning he's offering full custody, property division in your favor, and a confidentiality clause." "That's generous," I said. "Guilt usually is." I smiled. "Draft the paperwork. Tell him I'll sign when he finishes closing his company." There was a pause. "You really don't want a second act, do you?" "No," I said, glancing toward Lily's empty cereal bowl. "I just want the curtain to fall at the right time." By noon, I had an unexpected visitor. Claire. She stood at the edge of my driveway, wearing oversized sunglasses and trembling slightly. Her car, the one that still faintly smelled like salad dressing, idled behind her. I stepped outside, crossing my arms. "You're brave," I said. "I didn't come to fight," she said, voice quivering. "I came to apologize." "That's new," I said. "Usually your kind sends flowers." Her eyes darted around the street. "You ruined me. Everyone knows. I can't even go to work. Do you have any idea what this feels like?" I stared at her, silent for a long moment. Then I said, "Yes. I know exactly what it feels like." She swallowed. "I didn't mean to hurt your daughter. I just didn't think," I finished. "Or maybe you thought she was an acceptable casualty in your little drama. Either way, you helped abandon an 8-year-old. I could have pressed charges. I didn't." Tears welled behind her sunglasses. "Please, just stop. You've won." "I'm not interested in winning," I said, stepping closer. "I'm interested in you remembering this every time you look at a family that isn't yours." Her voice cracked. "You're cruel." "No," I said evenly. "I'm thorough." She turned, stumbling toward her car, her heels slipping slightly on the damp pavement. Before she opened the door, I added, "Claire, maybe switch cars. That smell's never coming out." She drove off without looking back. The street was quiet again, save for the rhythmic hiss of sprinklers from a neighbor's lawn. I could almost feel the neighborhood exhaling, a collective release of tension it didn't quite understand. At 2, the journalist called, the same one who'd written the first piece. "Julia," she said, "we're doing a follow-up. People are calling you the woman who turned the tables. Want to comment?" I hesitated, glancing at the framed photo of Lily on the counter. "No comment," I said. "Just print the truth." "That's what everyone's reading," she said. "For once, it's actually interesting." By 4, the final domino fell. Mark's company website went offline. His business partner filed a public statement announcing his immediate departure due to personal and ethical concerns. Local radio mentioned the scandal between weather updates. When I picked Lily up from school, she was grinning. "Mom, everyone said Grandma's party was on the internet." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did you say?" "I told them you were teaching grown-ups how to behave," I laughed. That's one way to put it. That night, I let her stay up late. We made popcorn, watched an old comedy, and laughed until her eyes drooped. When she finally fell asleep on the couch, I covered her with a blanket and stepped outside. The air was cool, crisp, washed clean by the rain. Across the street, Kara stood on her porch with a mug, giving me a silent salute. I returned it. Down the block, Evelyn's once perfect house sat in darkness, curtains drawn, the empire of control reduced to silence. For all her years of orchestrating, she'd never realized that power wasn't about noise. It was about restraint. I walked to the end of the driveway and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the manicured lawns and the gossip and the glass facades, was freedom, not the cinematic kind, the quiet, earned kind. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mark. Just one line. "You've made your point. I hope you can live with it." I typed back, "I already am." Then I blocked his number. The house behind me glowed faintly through the windows, warm and still. Inside was Lily, safe and dreaming. Inside was proof that calm could return after chaos, if you built it yourself. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening to the distant hum of the highway and the faint chorus of crickets. Then I whispered into the night, not for anyone else but me, "She must learn, huh?" A small smile tugged at my lips. She did. The porch light flickered once, as if nodding in agreement, and I went back inside. The story didn't need an afterword. It didn't need redemption. It needed this: a woman, her daughter, and the quiet sound of victory that no one could take away. The curtain fell, and for the first time, it stayed closed.